The following is a special presentation of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome to Tough Enough, a recap and breakdown show from the MMA Outsiders, following every episode of The Ultimate Fighter Season 32. Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko, presented by Playback. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Albano and Zain Bando.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Tough Enough. Zain, I can't believe it. It's the second to last Tough Enough that we're doing. Next week's it. Next week is the last episode of season 32 of The Ultimate Fighter. I can't believe it's come this quick.
Yeah, I can't believe it either. The season's gone by quick. The fights have been great. We already have a bit of clarity as to who is going to be in one of the Ultimate Fighter finale fights, which we'll get to in just a little bit. Still need clarity on the other one with some things going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, we have one fight. That's determined, and another fight which we still need to figure out next week. But that one has a lot of question marks around it.
No 100%. And speaking of question marks and all that, Tom, as I like to always say on this show, and I'm actually here giving you your flowers. It's been a pleasure doing this after show with you. Year one was a little bit rough. Year two could not have gone any smoother, and I think we can start our early countdown clocks to season 33 because this has been a staple. It seems like people like it from a post recap show perspective, especially if you can't watch every single episode. And we really do mean it sincerely. We are very grateful to bring you this show every week because there are still the old Ultimate Fighter diehards out there. So any of you that have tuned into every single episode so far, we really, really appreciate you, as this is the extension of the flagship show that we do every single week to kick off your week. So it's from Tom and myself to all of you. Thank you for enjoying the ride with us, and it'll be cool to only have a couple more episodes to go, but this has been a really fun season so far.
It really has. But you mentioned season 33. There's questions around season 33 because, well, the UFC Apex is going to be temporarily closed from November till about summer. So here's my question. Obviously it'll be done before the next Dana White Contender Series season in 2025. What's going to happen to TUF season 33?
Yeah, so I think there's two options there. One, you host the entire season Virgin Hotels, or two, you move it to Abu Dhabi, or you even do it sooner during a time frame that I'm not thinking of. I'm usually on the ball with these types of things, but yeah, I mean, let's just say this. Given that scenario, the options are very, very limited for what season 33 could look like.
Yeah, that would be wild if they did in Abu Dhabi. I just hope they don't skip a year because this year, like you kind of said, this season has kind of been fantastic. And it's been a fun year to do this post show with you. So,
yeah, and it may not be, obviously, you and I can assume this. It may not be the biggest TUF season in terms of ratings, but in terms of quality episodes, most of them have been pretty good.
I know. All right, we got to get moving. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to follow and subscribe. Obviously, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell if you are watching on our YouTube home, which is youtube.com/ETB Network. We've just passed 830 subscribers. Help us continue our goal to 1,000. We can't thank you enough for your support. Yes, I said follow because, of course, this is a live stream. This goes out not just to the ETB Network YouTube, but also to the ETB Network social media accounts, the Bando's Breakdown social media accounts. So give us a follow. Give our show a follow at MMA Outsiders, ETB, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Do the same for the network at ETB Network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure, of course, if you can't watch us or you don't want to watch us, then take the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcast. Obviously, this is a live stream, so this is not the parent show with the MMA Outsiders. But I mean, if you have YouTube Premium, you could just have audio only with that too.
Really good.
But again, listen to us on our flagship show, the MMA Outsiders, wherever you get your podcast. You may have noticed that there was no episode today. That is because of a scheduling switch. So instead, the next episode of the MMA Outsiders will be released tomorrow, special 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time, where we'll talk about the Apex, we'll talk about UFC 305, and so much more. But that's for the Apex. I mean, that's for that episode. That's for that show. We're here for TUF. We're here for the Ultimate Fighter.
100%. I guess we could get it into it by quickly reminding you that the Ultimate Fighter and every single other show on the network is presented by Playback. So Tom, would you have the would you have the pleasure, if you will, of doing the doing the honors?
Yes, can't thank our friends over at Playback enough. You know, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And I believe on Thursday will be the next edition of Fight Study, time to be determined for Thursday for Fight Study, which is going to be our Fight Study for UFC 305, where we'll discuss Dricus du Plessis, we'll discuss Israel Adesanya, we'll talk about their big fight. But like I said, right now, we're here for TUF. And this episode, Zain, was quite wild. But it wasn't just wild in terms of the two fighters who compete in their semifinal bouts tonight, because I think the storyline continues to be, Zain, what the fate is going to be of one Zig Ramaska, who was told on this episode that he has a, quote, 97% chance of being cleared for his semifinal fight against Myron Santos. However, last week, you may remember, he got the clearance from the third-party doctor. He got the clearance from the UFC's physician, who we'll see later on in this episode, too. We'll discuss him. But there is a little holdup with the commission, as I kind of feared last week. So alternates are still being decided. They're not even going to make a decision on Zig until the middle of next week's episode, which is just nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts from one perspective, but from another perspective, it's brilliant when it comes to the production crew, the Ultimate Fighter, because they want you sucked into the last possible second of the season, and what a better way to do that than hold out to see if Zig can fight or not. It definitely leaves you on a bit of a cliffhanger, and that's exactly what episode 11, minus the fight, held us up on, and I'm sure you'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is credit to the production team, because that's the whole thing. It is just a big focus right now, because obviously Robert and Patty were the two fighters on this episode, and I said it was the semifinal fight I was most looking forward to and I loved, and we'll talk about that later. But right now, I just can't help but think about whatever's going on with Zig and just the madness in terms of, trying to see if he'll be ready, and then trying to have the alternates at the standby. I mean, it's a 97% chance, but there's still a chance he's not going to be cleared. And this is the Nevada Athletic Commission, whose history is, quite sketchy.
Yeah, it's quite sketchy for sure. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, with the way the Nevada State Athletic Commission has been handling themselves lately, I'm going to lean on the side of, yeah, he will get cleared. I mean, if you think about it, Dan Ige versus Diego Lopez occurred on hours' notice at UFC 303. If that fight on a massive pay-per-view International Fight Week can occur on a few hours' notice for the biggest UFC pay-per-view of the summer, then I'm sure an injury that's essentially fully healed and has been cleared by two other non-NSAC slash UFC doctors that were secondary doctors that got a second opinion. To me, there's no reason why he shouldn't be cleared. Let alone is there any reason why, if he fights, he were to be medically unfit. To me, this just feels like a drama fest. And to me, they're just dragging this out to see if he actually will fight, or are they thinking of the cliffhanger where somehow, some way he will be cleared, and all of a sudden another twist in the episode happens as to where he can't fight at all simply because he doesn't feel ready to fight. I know that's a bit of an outlier scenario, but
yeah, that's going to be an extreme outlier, because he's talked about during last week's episode and this week's episode the stress of the process, that he feels ready, he wants to fight, I mean,
Right.
this is a
And
chance.
think about it. He's still worried about cutting weight. So you have that cutting weight aspect coupled with the fact that you still might not fight. That's a recipe for massive stress. And I could totally understand the pressure that he's under because he knows that if this fight doesn't happen, his road potentially to the UFC may take a much different path. Hopefully, the UFC would be accommodating towards him, assuming that he doesn't fight. But still, every single UFC journey is different. And you always feel like if you turn down an opportunity, you're losing out on potentially ever competing in the UFC ever.
And Zain, going back to season 1, like going all the way back to season 1 with TUF, the ones who get picked up on TUF, even though they don't win the competition, get significantly less money than the winners.
Right. Exactly.
It's a 6-figure contract versus a standard, contract. So if you're Zig, you really don't want to just completely, miss out on your chance just because of the athletic commission. Like I said, he got clearance from a third-party doctor and he got clearance from the UFC's physician. If it was just the UFC's physician, I might understand why there might be some concern from an athletic commission, but he also got one from a third-party doctor too. So I feel like Zig should be fine. And like you said, some of this could just be drama-filled because the backup plans, Zan, we talked about potential backup plans last week, and I said, well, the favorite to me, considering Ramaska was on Team Shevchenko, considering the weight class, would be Nathan Fletcher. But at the start of this episode, whoops, turns out he has a complete fracture of his fibula. He's been feeling it ever since losing his first round fight. Fletcher talked about how he was walking with a limp, and people were, his teammates were kind of in a joking way nagging on him, saying he was just trying to avoid practice. But no, apparently the UFC's.
Yeah, he was 100% injured, and Dr. Davidson, the main head doctor of the UFC, knew instantly after looking at the X-ray that he was done.
Yeah, it was a clean break.
It was a clean break, and he even said you have to be out for 8 weeks before even remotely starting rehab, which is even worse. So
yeah, so unfortunately, it seemed like based on Dana's words, he never said it completely, but just taking his words at face value, Nathan Fletcher was going to be the backup option in case Zig was not good to go. Unfortunately, this injury is going to prevent that, and Fletcher's season and any chance of a potential comeback is done, sadly.
Well, for right now.
For the time that the show was airing. Hopefully by the end of the year, he is back, or the start of next year, he is back in action. And maybe you never know.
Well, that would make sense because the show was recorded in the winter, spring. So you would assume that by now he's close to being 100%. So it could be an end of year return, early next year return.
And you have to assume maybe Zain, maybe a fight or two in Cage Warriors, and maybe he'll get an opportunity to compete in the UFC. Maybe potentially as a late notice fill-in fighter.
100%. Yeah.
But this is going to bring now questions as to what happened. I mean, Fletcher's out. Now what happens if Zig goes out? So basically, the solution Dana has come up with is one team has selected a representative. And they are basically the two that we talked about last week, Zain, where you've got Edwin Cooper from Team Shevchenko and Guillermo Torres from Team Grasso.
You called it.
Yeah, so these two are basically they're going to cut weight as well. They are basically going to be on standby. And if in the middle of next week, Dana said it's going to be a pre-fight decision if Ramaska is going to be cleared. And if it's not cleared, the commission is going to review Cooper Jr.'s medicals, Torres's medicals, all their information, and make a selection between one of those two.
Yeah. And if it was up to me, I'm sure you'd agree. I think the better alternate between these two is Torres, but you never know.
I think in terms of experience and in terms of overall fight ability, Torres. But Torres lost a clean 2-round decision to Rody Ruiz at the start of the season. Cooper had a 3-round decision late in the season. So Torres maybe has had more turnaround time. Like he's a little more rested. Cooper, obviously, it would be a quicker turnaround. And apparently Cooper skipped practice, if I'm hearing what Valentina said right, when she told him about this. So that's not a good look in my book. It's, we've talked about Edwin Cooper's problems, but
no, it's not. And the biggest excuse he made was that he wanted to relax, and Valentina was not buying it at all.
Well, remember Valentina's talk at like week 1. There, no relax, no drinking water. Say what you will about Valentina and her weird coaching habits, or heaven forbid if you want to say bad coaching habits, but her team basically seemed to love her.
Oh, and considering that it's coming from arguably the greatest women's flyweight of all time, she probably knows a little something about training like a badass. So, she's someone that you wouldn't want to mess with, whether you're on Team Shevchenko or not. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So, I mean, but we did talk about Cooper Jr.'s record, compared to everybody else, and it seemed like he was one that maybe didn't stick out as much compared to others. But like you said, Cooper Jr. Like I said, Cooper Jr. ended up going 3 rounds. He almost could have made it to the semifinals had he not maybe had a slow start in his first round matchup. Torres lost a clean 2 rounds to Rody Ruiz, who was a semifinalist. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it comes to Ramaska's replacement. But I'm like you, I'm hoping that Ramaska gets cleared. And then there's Myron Santos, who is like, oh, great. Now, like, he says he was willing, okay, whatever happens, happens. But at the same time, I could kind of read the body language of like, oh, great. Like, now I got to prepare for 3 potential opponents.
Yeah, and he even admitted it in his on-camera interview that he's like, yeah, I'll be ready, but preparing for 3 potential opponents is not an ideal scenario. So,
yeah, no, it's not an ideal, especially considering one of them, it could be another Robert Batty situation where it's his own teammate in Guillermo.
mm-hmm. And that means Grasso would have to step aside again, which we'll get to in just a minute. But
yeah. But now, Zain, and I'll talk about it now because you know what? I'm not going to save it for the end. Let's talk about it now. I mean, the end of the episode, Zain, the teaser for next week. It seems like there could be another twist because it looked like Myron's struggling with a weight cut.
Yeah, we could be in for one of the wildest episode 12s in recent TUF history. For sure.
Now, if I want to double check, but were Myron and Edwin the ones who had the double weight miss? No,
Yeah,
wait, that was
no.
It wasn't them. Okay, it wasn't them. But the thing is, that's not a good look when it's in the semifinals and you're struggling with weight. And that's the other thing about these potential replacements. We've already seen Myron versus Edwin. I don't think I really want to watch that fight again.
I don't think so either. And I don't think Dana wants to see it either because he knows how it's going to go.
And I guarantee you that we talked about this off camera. If Zig does not get cleared by the athletic commission, you might see a Dana rant next week.
Oh, 100%.
He would not be happy because look at this. And the thing is, on top of it, that's why it like the obvious choice for an alternate was going to be Nathan Fletcher, but now he's got a broken leg. The plans are all completely foiled if Zig doesn't get cleared.
100%, man. And I think that's what adds to the drama. The Ultimate Fighters on this, return phase the last couple of years. The UFC wants people to be sucked back into the show again. This is one of those scenarios where it's perfect. You can't wait for episode 12 because you have no idea what's going to happen because the beginning of the episode could look entirely different than the end of it. So,
yeah, like we're going into next week, Zain,
knowing
Myron Santos versus Zygmontes Ramaska. But can we be honest? With Myron's weight struggle and Zig's in, this is going to be a long shot. This could be our semifinal next week. Edwin Cooper versus Guillermo Torres.
Yeah, and we'd have to repick all over again. So
this would be insanity.
But this would be insanity considering that if this scenario plays out, could you imagine the finale and they're losing one fight and still winning the finale? Because that would be the scenario.
I mean, it's not the first time we've seen an extreme case of the brackets being screwed up. Remember the Rousey Tate season? Where somebody got a bye to the semifinals because their opponent missed weight, and then they missed weight themselves in the semis?
Yeah, and then the most infamous one of Jesse Taylor going out drinking the night before his fight and him being eliminated from the finale altogether.
Right at the end of the season. Yeah, he didn't even get that was just insanity. And then Jesse Taylor won TUF again.
Yeah.
And then he screwed up again with a drug test
then
failure.
he screwed up again. Yeah. Unbelievable.
This show just brings out sometimes the craziest kinds of scenario. Well, hopefully, I know we talk about love and the drama, but hopefully there is no drama next week and we do get Myron versus Zig one way or another.
No, I hope so too. But this is one of the reasons why people used to be obsessed with the Ultimate Fighter, because every week you didn't know what was going to happen. So
it's insane. And Edwin Cooper also talked about his own concerns about a weight cut too when he was talking with Valentina.
Yeah, that's even crazier. It's almost like there's a pre-planned musical chairs game before the game even starts.
You know what? How about next week? Zig, Myron Cooper, and Guillermo all just miss weight.
Oh no!
I would want to see what Dana's reaction would be to that.
Yeah, I wonder what you would do in a commission scenario like that. That would be weird.
Well, you know what? I just made reference for it. We had one catch weight bout during the season already.
That's true. I just wonder if you do them as catchweight bouts and the winner of the finale is the winner of the finale, or if there's some sort of penalty that I'm not thinking of. But that would be madness.
What a PFL style point deduction happens in the UFC?
Oh, you never know. Anything is possible.
As Kevin Garnett once said, anything is possible.
That's true. And the only other question we're leaving out is where the heck
is Kevin Lee fit in all this? All right, well, let's talk about where Alexa Grasso fits into all this week with this week's episode, because
she really doesn't.
So obviously we talked about last season where Team McGregor won only one first round matchup, and it was like one or two people basically had to go over to Team McGregor. That didn't happen that's right, it was just one. It was Katana, because of course.
Yep.
This didn't happen this season though. So Team Grasso won more fights. It was 5-3, but her two players, Valentin and Patty, were going to go at it, and Alexa agreed to step aside. The assistant coaches, the other fighters, worked with them instead. They had a weird schedule where one, would be separated off from the other, and everybody and Robert and Patty were cool with it. And everything seemed fine. So this ran smooth, a lot smoother than I thought it was going to.
Oh, for sure. And just to see the pre-fight interaction of them at the house, just saying, "Oh, we're gonna lay the weather down tomorrow, and this is gonna be the most exhilarating experience of our lives." Like to see the genuine happiness for both guys before they're about to step in there and fight in the biggest fight of their careers to date was really, really cool. What did you think?
Yeah, no, it was so cool to see how these two bonded, and it's like, even after the fight itself, I hope they remain friends, because these two had such a strong bond. And Robert even talked about it. Actually, Robert and Patty kind of both made reference to it during their phone calls home. Patty with his girlfriend, Robert with his best friend. Basically, that when you're there and there's no phone and 24/7, really, you gotta find,
those are guys.
You gotta find basically strength in each other, even though those are the guys you're competing against. Like they're competing against one another, but they also train with one another. So Robert and Patty basically had to find, they formed a bond, and it was a strong one. And it's like,
I bet you that 90% of that cast is going to stick together after this season and remain close. But those two, to me, and I even told you this off air, those two to me seems like they're going to be friends for the rest of their lives, and if they're not, I'll be very surprised.
I hope so too. I mean, this we talked about it before, minus the one tiff last week that happened at the Coaches Challenge. This has been one of the tightest, groups that we've ever seen
in several seasons, in several years.
This is in terms of like talent, because I know there were some concerns about the featherweight talent. Some of them hadn't fought in a year and such, but most of it was good. Yeah, in terms of talent, in terms of personality, this has been one of the best casts, really, that we've seen.
And Dana even admitted it on episode 10 that this is a crew that he'll miss. So if the boss man is saying that, that means that the season has gone relatively smooth from a no chaos perspective, which is a good thing.
And maybe this sparks, hey, maybe we'll have a second international TUF season, basically.
You never know.
The format, I mean, maybe not do the same format year after year, but give it 2 or 3 years, and maybe they do a second season format like this, where they're from all over the world.
No, you never know. But in order to do that, I think you'd have to do it in a different country. I don't think you could do it in the United States. You'd have to do it very similarly to the Canada versus Australia season, but in a different way, obviously.
Well, you know what? I just said maybe not next season, but if the UFC does an Ultimate Fighter season in Abu Dhabi while the Apex is under construction, maybe there is a chance.
No, you never know. You never know.
So there was also a little bit of fun, by the way. Since we're towards the end of the season, both teams got to, go out and enjoy the town for a little bit. Two very different go out on the towns, though. Grasso takes her team over to Topgolf, and it was good to see Grasso actually spending time with her team outside of all the training and all the, the Performance Institute and such. And then Shevchenko, well, anybody who knows Valentina knows where they'll end up going.
Shooting they went to the shooting range, and Valentina Shevchenko showed everyone who was the boss. That was for sure. And to hear Rudy Roots compare Valentina Shevchenko to a female James Bond tells you all you need to know about how much of a stud Valentina Shevchenko is in almost everything that she does. Whether it's whoever entered Instagram, which, by the way, whoever entered Instagram, shout out to them, because they're posting content of her almost like maybe 6 or 7 times a week. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, she's a sniper on the shooting range. And number 3, if she really wanted to be a fitness model, she could. So,
Rudy kind of said it. She's a sniper in the cage, and she's a sniper out of the cage.
100%.
She's good with weapons both in the cage and out of the cage. It's unbelievable to see. Like you said, she is one of the best female flyweights in the world, and it'll be interesting to see how, if she can get back to form and get her belt back in about a month's time when they're in the Sphere.
For sure, and obviously we're not here to talk about the fight today, but for us to just even sit here and say that an Ultimate Fighter finale coaches fight is happening for the first time in 2 years is just a very is just a very, very good thing, considering how crazy this year has been with fights and switches. And to see at the time that this is airing on Tuesday night, August 13th, to see that we're about a month out and the fight is still on means that there's a lot of positive vibes going into UFC 306, and let's hope it stays that way.
By the way, hi Connor, hi Mike.
Seriously,
any update?
Anything? No, I
think
yeah, literally.
All right. Speaking of the 5, okay, here's your warning. All right, let's talk about the fight. And for the first time in the semifinals, I'm on the board. Robert Valentin. It was a scare. Let me put it this way. It was a big scare. I thought when he got rocked, I said, oh, great, I'm 0 for 3. Because, they each had a different strategy. Patty said he wanted to establish his jabber. He wanted to work calf kicks, and then he would land the power shots. And that's what he employed in round 1. And Valentin wanted to use his experience, use his aggression. I mean, we saw the 15-second knockout of Giannis with the elbow. It was insane.
Insanity.
Valentin went out with the aggression. Patty, like I said, he implemented his game plan pretty well. Patty tried to catch Valentin with a jumping knee. I'm like, oh my God, imagine that's how the fight ends. There's a flurry about 80 seconds in. And Sam, we talked about Alexa. About 80 seconds into the fight, their first big flurry, you can just hear like a grunt from her. She can't pick a side. So it's like killing her, basically watching her, 2 of her best have to fight one another. So anyway, less than 2 minutes to go. Patty, as I mentioned, he throws a flurry. Valentin stumbles. Valentin trying to hold on to a leg, trying to clinch up any way possible. Patty's laying down hammer fists. I said, okay, Robert's probably going to lose his grip and lose the fight. But no, Robert didn't. Instead, gets feet. They're in a clinch. Robert does a judo throw. And I'm like, oh my God, where'd he pull that from? And then they're on the ground. They're in side control. Like you mentioned to me off air, Zan. I was thinking nothing of it. And then all of a sudden, I see Patty
But-
like tipping the air. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even see the armbar. I had to look at it on a replay.
Yeah, definitely the most unique armbar I've seen, not just on the Ultimate Fighter in a couple of years, but in a couple of years period. That was very, very
I don't
out
know
of
how
nowhere,
you
out
saw
of left
that was
field.
like inside armbar, which that was like an
Which you
inside
never,
armbar.
you never see that.
No, it's either the straight armbar, where the person's laying on their back, or something like we saw from Sergey Spivak last weekend, where
Yep.
the opponent is on the front side and it's a verbal tap.
Yep. Which, but hey, speaking of, we got more into that in the MMA Outsiders. When was the last time you saw a verbal tap submission? You never see that.
You rarely ever see that. You rarely. Maybe you'll see that with like a TKO when somebody's taking a beating, but not when an actual clinch up. Although, did we not see one at the PFL a couple weeks ago?
We did, but
Before
I can't remember.
I think.
Yep. Yeah, and he lost because of it. He was screaming, "I tap, I tap." Yeah.
Well, the ref was screaming, and the ref said, "Do that again, and you lose." And he screamed. I can't help but think, Zain, when we're talking about verbal taps and screaming, Joe Warren in Bellator years ago when he was caught in the leg bar, and he screamed.
Oh, I remember that, and obviously the most famous one being George St. Pierre against Matt Hughes.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But I mean, man, if Robert was able to do that against somebody like Patty, he is, like I said, he's dangerous. I think one way or another, whatever happens in the finale fight, he's getting a contract.
Oh, I think so. I think so too. And to add to that, I think Ryan Loder's gonna have a very tough out.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I said it before, and I say it again. I said it at the start of playoffs. I say it again. I think Robert was my pick for middleweight, and
you were right. You were 100% right. And at the very least, you're on the board. I may still have a better record than you by one fight, but at least you're on the board. So
at least it's not a shutout.
No, true.
Yeah. All right, but yeah, this was a fun fight. I mean, I feel bad for Patty.
I do too. I really do. Like, he was the kind of guy, based on the way he was talking and based on his story, that you wanted to see win so bad. It's like, I want to win for Ireland. We need to reignite the UFC back to Ireland. He was so close, man. It kind of crushed me a little bit.
But I think, just like with Nathan, give him a fight or two in Cage Warriors, and I think we'll see him in the UFC at some point.
Yeah, the UFC or a spot on DWCS.
Well, you know what? We keep talking about, maybe Paddy the Baddy has earned a main event after what he did at 304, like a fight night main event in Europe. Maybe Paddy McCorry would be good for the undercard for that.
No, 100%. Paddy McCorry or Nathan Fletcher when he heals up.
Yeah, that they would make for good fighters for an undercard for a Paddy the Baddy, or even an Ian Gary fight night main event in Europe.
100%, and even Robert Valentin would make for a good undercard spot in either Russia or Paris or one of these other foreign countries as well. There are a lot of guys that you could stick on these foreign cards where you would say, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." Absolutely.
All right, so there's a lot of circumstances with next week. So you were going with Myron and I was going with Zig, I think was our prediction. That's our predictions for now, but there's a lot of questions going on at this point, like we said before. And I think I'm less looking forward to the fight and more looking forward to just trying to figure out how we're going to get to this last featherweight semifinal, given everything going on from Zig's injury to what the alternate could be to the tease about Myron's weight cut. Like, it's insanity.
Yeah, 100%. So just to throw the disclaimer out there, because this is the scenario, we're not going to firmly lock in a prediction because we don't know what's going to happen with episode 12. So if anything changes, we will address this exact fight then. Is given that this
we will. You know what? We always do the live tweeting for every episode. If something happens, we will live tweet the change that we have for our predictions.
Absolutely.
So stay with us. Again, that's why it is important that you follow the MMA Outsiders at MMA Outsiders ETB, not just for the content from our episodes, but we live tweet every episode of TUF. And
by the way, I think we're one of the few accounts that actually does it every single week. So that's another reason to follow us too. We're one of the few. We're one of the few accounts actually doing it. So
make sure. Actually, Robert responded to us very recently, I think.
Yeah, I did notice that. That's right. Yeah. I did notice that.
Maybe we need him on at some point, whether it's here or whether it's on the MMA Outsiders.
For sure. Let me see what I can do about that. For sure. For sure.
All right. But that is going to do it for us. Next week is the last episode of The Ultimate Fighter. Next week. So here's the plan. Next week is not going to be our last episode because we will recap the last episode of TUF for TUF the season 32. But given the circumstances of the card on August 24th being, well, let's say
not ideal.
Not ideal, or even worse, on par with the card that we had last weekend in the Apex. What we're going to do is, instead of a traditional MMA Outsiders episode that week, that weekend after, so it would be the 26th, the 27th, pardon me. Instead, what we're going to do, we're going to give you one more Tough Enough episode where we'll recap the finale fights. We'll talk about the season in general and just put a bow on this tough season.
Yeah, and Tom and I admitted it off the air, and something we didn't do, and we apologize to those who watched Tough Enough last year, where some of you guys probably didn't feel like there was a full conclusion to it. He thought that this season was so good that the only thing to do was to
give this a conclusion.
Was to do a full season recap. So that's what we're gonna do.
And honestly, I'm looking forward to the tough fights more on that August 24th card than anything else, even the Cannon Year main event.
Oh, I am very much in agreement with you, and it's 100%. And the reason why it's 100% because I get to do the show with you every week by being able to follow the season and to do this show. Yeah, I'm very, very excited for the tough finale fights. That's for sure. So
yeah, but we do have one more traditional week of Tough Enough to go. So make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of this, plus our MMA Outsiders, plus everything else at the ETB Network. Make sure again to follow at MMA Outsiders ETB at ETB Network. Again, subscribe to youtube.com/ETB Network if you haven't already and help us continue our climb to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for your support. Listen to our flagship show, the MMA Outsiders, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to go to etbpodcast.com for more information on the website, plus blogs. And there could be quite a few more considering the NFL season is getting close. And
100%.
And speaking of the NFL and everything, shout out to our friends over at Playback. We will give you an official time. Tomorrow on the MMA Outsiders for when we're going to do a fight study on Thursday on playback.tv/ETB Network. And then stay tuned because we have more stuff coming. You know, Dan and Tony have started their WWE stuff on Playback, so watch them. We'll have plenty of NFL stuff when the NFL season comes around, college stuff when the college season comes around. Both those times, football season is on the horizon.
Yeah, both those times football season is on the horizon, which sadly means, Tom, we're getting into the final stretch of the MMA calendar, which means before you know it, December 2024 is going to be here, and you and I are both going to be very sad going into awards, but it is what it is. So
yeah, well, let's just hope, and I'll say it again tomorrow on the MMA Outsiders. Let's just hope that Drickus and Israel give us, a good ending to what has been otherwise a kind of disappointing summer in MMA.
Given how hyped the fight is, I would say there's an 80-20 possibility that'll probably happen. So
all right, well, let's not jinx it. So let's end things. That's Zain on Tom. We'll see you next week for episode 12, the last episode of TUF 32.
See you guys soon. Have a good one and enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy UFC 305. We'll see you guys next week.
Well, or for some of you, we'll see you tomorrow on the MMA Outsiders.
That's true. That's true.
All right, we'll see you all then.
Have a good one.